I was asked by one of my viewers to show how I diagnose the machines I get and to show what tools I use so they can get a better idea of how it's done. I hate to say it, but it's not what tools you have but how you use them, and as for me, my tools are simple, basic, and cost very little. What's up everyone, and thank you for stopping by. Today's projects are this Echo blower, a hyper tough trimmer, and a Troy-built mower. And the problem is that we need to find out if there's any chance on saving any of this stuff. Now we're going to diagnose them and then decide what to do with them. Now, before we start with the tools, the first thing I want to do is look over the equipment and make sure it's safe to run. I want to make sure that I don't damage the machine, and of course, I don't want to get hurt by them either. In the case of the mower, I need to make sure there's some oil in the engine and whether there's still any gasoline in the tank. The reason I need to see if there's any gasoline in it is because I don't want to accidentally start a fire, because I intend on tipping the mower on its side to inspect the deck for damages. I also need to see if the blade is there, because starting an engine without a blade is very difficult because it acts as a counterweight for the engine. This will also give us a chance to see if the deck is covered with dirt or grass clippings. Now luckily we still have the blade on this one and it looks like it's in great shape, but we need to clean the deck because it's covered in grass clippings. Next we'll jump over to the blower and see if it's in decent shape. So I bought this blower years ago and it stopped working on me one day, so I just put it away. Now the first thing I'm going to check is whether there's any fuel in the tank, which the answer is no. So I must have drained it out, which is a good thing, otherwise the fuel could clog the entire fuel system. As for the trimmer, I found this on the side of a busy road. I'm guessing that it must have fallen out of someone's truck or that it was thrown out. It looks as though there's a few ounces of fuel in it, which I'll probably just get rid of when I try and fix it. The first tool I use when it comes to diagnosing my equipment is a small bottle of fuel. Now this will let me test if an engine will start and run without putting any fuel into the tank. I also use the same bottle for mowers as well because a tiny amount of oil isn't going to hurt it. The next tool I use is my spark checker. If the engine won't start, I need to find out if it's because there's no spark. And the last tool is of course my compression tester. If there is spark but the engine still won't start, then this will let me know if the engine isn't compressing the air like it's supposed to. Now let's try using these tools on the trimmer and see what happens. I'm going to squeeze the throttle lever and then put some fuel into the carb's throat and then give it a few pulls without the choke because it won't need it, and see if it starts and runs for a few seconds. Also, make sure the throttle lever is still squeezed while pulling the rope because we got a lot of fuel in there, so it's going to need all the air it can to start. As you can see, it took several pulls before it even tried and start, and that's because I sprayed just a little too much fuel into the carb's throat, which basically flooded the engine. So we know the engine starts and runs, but what if it didn't start? That's when I use my spark checker to find out if we have spark. To use the checker, just remove the wire from the plug and install the checker in line with the plug, and then pull the rope a few times and watch for an orange glow in the tester. Depending upon lighting conditions, this might be hard to see. I stopped the video, that way you can see there is an orange glow. Now the checker can be hard to see as it moves around, so it might be helpful to have someone watch as you pull the rope. Now you don't need a checker to test for spark, as you can use the spark plug itself. However, it has its own issues as well. Now to use the spark plug, just remove it from the engine and then make sure there's not an excessive amount of carbon buildup on it, and then reconnect the wire to it and then make sure the body of the plug is grounded to the metal on the engine. I find it helpful to use a piece of metal to do this. Then just pull the rope a few times and watch for a bluish arc to appear at the tip of the plug. So here's the still frame from the video, that way you can see the arc, but the drawback is it can still be hard to see the spark even using the plug itself. Now on older machines, the sparks seem to be a lot stronger, but on this one, it's really tough to see. For a different demonstration, I'll do the same test, but this time it'll be in the dark. So this time, we can easily tell that we have a working ignition system on this trimmer. Now since I know this engine works, I'm going to take a leap of faith and put some fuel into the tank for a real test run. I've got a pretty good feeling about this one. I mean, it fell out of a moving vehicle, so it was probably working when they were transporting it. So it started, and it would have stayed running if I wouldn't have moved the lever to the run position so soon. Now, depending upon when this video is released, I might have already made the repair video on this trimmer. If there is a link at the top of the screen, you can click on it to see the repair video. Now, to be honest, this particular trimmer I don't really care for, and the video will explain why I regret picking it up. Since I know this engine runs, I'm not going to use the compression tester on it. Instead, I'll be using it on the Echo blower because the last time I used one on this blower, the reading was very low. Now that was on my 20-year-old tester that I've used on a lot of engines, and this one I'll be using is very new and only used on small engines. Before I use it, I'm going to put some fuel into the carb's throat and see if it does anything on this blower. So it started, which is great news, but now I want to know how worn out this engine is. According to the last compression test, it said it was very worn out. I've been considering the idea of rebuilding this engine, but I'm not sure if it's worth it or not. I bought this blower from a lawn care professional who more than likely used it a lot. I didn't know they were a lawn care person until I got to their house and saw their truck and trailer along with all their equipment. So surprisingly, the reading now is a very healthy 150 psi, which is extremely good considering its age and the kind of life it's had. Now I'm not sure what just happened because if you watch the older video on this blower, the reading was only 56 psi. Now this is good news, so I guess I'll be showing a video on this blower in the future. Now the last piece of equipment we'll be looking at is the lawnmower, and of course we'll be doing the same diagnostic procedure as before. Now I don't remember what the history was on this mower, but I will say it looks to be used and abused, so I don't have a lot of hope for it. So the good news is that it does run, despite looking pretty worn out. But of course, you can't judge an engine by how it looks from the outside, so this would be a great candidate for the compression tester. Now this engine has a compression release, so the reading, at least while using the pull cord, will be lower than the actual reading. But all I'm looking for is something higher than 50 psi. So the reading looks to be about 60 psi, and what that means is this engine is definitely worn out some, probably due to the dirt it was inhaling past the air filter, but there's still more than enough compression for the engine to start and run. Hopefully in the repair video for this mower, I'll end up redoing the compression test, but this time I'll use a drill to turn the engine over. As you can see, it's really pretty basic when it comes to diagnosing these engines. Now the hard part is what happens after that, where you have to find out why it doesn't have spark or why the fuel isn't getting to the engine, and the worst problem is trying to figure out why the compression is so low. That's the part of the diagnostic that requires a lot of experience and knowledge. So my question is, after seeing the tools I use to diagnose my equipment, is there something I'm missing that would help me better diagnose them? Now, I'm by no means a professional, nor have I been doing this for decades, only a few years, so any help would be greatly welcomed. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions, and I hope to see you in the next video.